Hi everybody, as always, thank you for joining me. We're going to jump right into Hi everybody, as always, thank you for joining me. We are going to jump right into today's topic. Right now we are still stunned by the documents released in the Heritage Foundation's case against Homeland Security with regards to Harry's visa. On the surface, they could just as well have enlarged a barcode and sent that to the Heritage Foundation. It is really laughable, and worst is that Judge Nichols must have approved it before it went out. So I honestly cannot tell whether he tried to make a fool of the Heritage Foundation and their lawyers or himself, because truly I think he made a jackass of himself, wasting his own and everyone else's time like this. But all is not lost, because one can find samples of visa application forms online. Now, I'm not going to go through every item on every page, but I'm going to run through it more or less, because the application form I have is not for an A1 or O1 visa. So there will be differences anyway. The pages I'm going through, however, will be very similar regardless of what kind of visa you're applying for. Now, obviously, the first page on all visa application forms are the same. It will contain personal information, name, address, phone, passport information, and so on. There's no reason for them to have redacted the first few lines, because we all know Harry's names, his marital status, his date of birth, and so on. But the rest of the section does ask for like a phone number, email address, home address, and so on. So I can absolutely understand them redacting the second half of that first or cover page. On the next page, you will find that you have to complete your travel information. Now, I'm sure that that page will be a little different for an A1 visa. It may be similar for an O1 visa, and it may be very different when applying for a permanent residence visa. What is interesting, and which I'm sure will pop up in every application form, are questions right at the bottom of this particular section. Like, have you ever been to the United States? Have you ever been issued a United States visa? Have you ever been refused an United States visa? Been refused admission to the United States, or had withdrawn your application for admission at the point of entry? Then, of course, you have to give a United States contact information. If you are visiting, say, family, it will be their details. If you are a tourist, it will be the first hotel you're staying at. If you are a diplomat, it will be the embassy, and so on and so on. The next section is all about your family, alternative contacts, and so on. Then there's a section on your work or education, and then comes the security and background information. I have no idea whether this section is exactly the same in most or all visa applications, but I guess it may be very similar. So let's go. Do you have communicable disease of public health significance, such as tuberculosis? Now, my dear friends, this is where I'm going to stand still for a minute, because I see you all took Lady C's clapping to heart without doing your homework. Harry may have been clapping his butt cheeks and other parts of his anatomy 10 times in his lifetime. I certainly don't know, and neither would anyone else unless maybe he contracted the ailment while in the army. But if he did, it would not be something he had to declare, because the happy clappies is one of the STDs which can be cured with a course of antibiotics. So if he filled in anything there, it would likely be something more permanent and contagious. You can go look those up. I'm not going to risk a kick in the backside mentioning communicable diseases by name on YouTube. Do you have a mental or physical disorder that poses or is likely to pose a threat to the safety or welfare of yourself or others? That is the second question. Okay, now if Harry truly suffers from depression, anxiety, and PTSD, like he has been telling us for years, then he would have had to answer this question. And it is possible or likely that you could be asked to obtain a medical report to prove that you are well enough to travel. I think in the case of someone seeking to stay in the United States, they very likely would have required a full physical and mental health evaluation report. The next question: are you or have you ever been a drug abuser or addict? Now you see, that's a catch, because they're giving you a choice. He may feel that he's not an addict, but he admitted to abusing drugs. So there you go. That was the one question the Heritage Foundation wanted answered. The one question they went to court for, and which was also redacted along with everything else. Now, for the person who was so rude in the comment section the other day and said I did not know what I was talking about, well, my dear, you suffer from unconscious bias, and embarrassingly so. Embarrassing for you, that is. Anyway, anyone in the United States, it does not matter in which state you live, who is not an American citizen, does not always fall under the laws of the state they are in, but they do always fall or are subjected to federal law. It is a bit tricky, but I've now gone and studied it, and we are going to go into it in detail. But because the ignorant person accused me of being ignorant, likely because she thinks I cannot possibly know these things, being South African, I'm going to give you a very quick, very condensed version of California, the state of California's drug policy. Alcohol is legal for adults 21 and over, blah, 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 blah. It goes on to describe the penalties for driving while intoxicated, etc. Amphetamines, methamphetamine, etc. are Schedule 2 on the Californian Uniform Controlled Substances Act. Methamphetamine is illegal for possession under Health and Safety Code 11377. Meth is also illegal under the Health and Safety Code 11378. Cannabis. All forms and preparations of cannabis are Schedule 1 on the California Uniform Controlled Substances Act. The adult use of marijuana went into effect 1st of January 2018. Now, here's the cracker for the oh-so-wise people who think that I'm ignorant. Despite its legality in California, marijuana is still considered a Schedule 1 drug under the United States Controlled Substances Act. And that means that federal prosecutors are allowed to arrest and prosecute cannabis users and sellers who are in accordance with California law, but not federal law. So that is what it says in the state of California drug policy. We'll talk about it more when we get to federal law. Harry talked about cocaine, so let's look that up. Cocaine and all forms of cocaine are Schedule 2 on the California Uniform Controlled Substances Act. Cocaine is illegal to possess under California Health and Safety Code 11350. Okay guys, I don't want to be here for the next day or two going through every drug. You guys can go read through the California Uniform Controlled Substances Act yourself if you want to know more. When it comes to mushrooms and psychedelics, it's a little more complicated, as it may be used for this but not for that. For instance, for treatment of mental health issues under supervision, blah, 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 blah. The point is that it's only legal under certain circumstances. Now, when it comes to federal law, it's even more complicated than I thought, because citizen or not, anyone residing in the United States can be charged under the state or federal United States law. Often, state and federal laws are in conflict with one another, as is the case, say, in California's laws pertaining to marijuana and the state or federal laws pertaining to marijuana. So when there is an issue of some kind, the question often is, which law should take precedent? The Constitution's Supremacy Clause states that federal law trumps any state law. But even here we have a problem, because the United States Supreme Court recognizes two limits on federal law. One, the applicable federal policy must have a constitutional basis. So this already limits federal or governmental laws and policies. And number two, the 10th Amendment prevents federal government from using the state as instrument of governance. Now I'm going to explain that in plain English. That is why in real life, if you watch true crime, you will notice that the local law enforcement will ask for the FBI's help. The FBI will not interfere unless they are asked to help and or assist. The FBI also gets involved when a crime stretches across state lines or national borders. For instance, in human and child trafficking, smuggling, etc. Again, I cannot read you all the intricate details and case studies, particularly pertaining to drugs and in particular to marijuana, because that's where a lot of clashes actually happens between state and federal. If you really want to know every last detail, then there's an excellent paper on it by Ilya Shapiro titled "This is Your Constitution on Drugs," and you will find it on nationalaffairs.com. So my helper, one of the three, put it in plain and simple English for us. Harry resides in California and has done so for a few years already, and he lives in a home which allegedly belongs to him and his wife, or at least his family. So in an argument on jurisdiction, the state will likely win. And as we now know, a certain amount of marijuana for personal use is 100% legal in California. So unless Harry starts to grow a plantation and selling without permission and registration, the authorities are likely not going to nail him on state or federal level for personal use. Although not quite as simple, the one surefire way they can nail him is if he flies from one state to another with a stash on him, whether he's personal or more than the allowed amount that he's allowed to have on him. It doesn't matter, because transporting marijuana across state lines is indeed illegal, and then it would also become a federal case. That, and of course, lying on his visa application, and of course, if he did not lie, he was indeed given an unfair waiver and given preferential treatment. That we now know. So now I also understand why the lawyers for the Heritage Foundation are concentrating on his visa and not dragging his current use into the case. It will become far too complicated. There will be arguments between state and federal. And because he resides in California and has done so over a long period of time, state will likely triumph in this case. Okay, so next time I'm going to talk to you about the children, and this time with brand new, never before heard information. So guys and girls, until we get to that, please take good care of yourselves and remember to smash that subscribe button on your way out and the like button if you liked it. That will help me a lot. Okay guys, take care. Bye.